I was exhausted. The dashboard clock still read 1:47 a.m. as I drove down the empty road, trying to keep my eyes open. I'll never forget that damn day. In 2016, my friend Ryan lived in a rural area near Topeka, Kansas, and I was heading back to Wichita after spending the day at his house. It was a little over an hour's drive, but in that absolute darkness, with the exhaustion weighing on my shoulders, it felt much longer. The highway cut through vast cornfields, and there was nothing for miles. No gas stations, no houses, no lights, just the road and the darkness swallowing everything around. The only sound was the engine of the car and the soft rustling of the wind outside. To keep myself awake, I cranked up the radio and took a sip of the warm energy drink I'd bought before leaving. That's when my headlights illuminated something in the middle of the road. I grimaced, forcing my eyes. The thing was just sitting there, right in the center of the lane, as if it had been placed there on purpose. I slowed down and felt a chill run up my spine as I recognized the object. It was a large, black suitcase, untouched, standing upright. I slammed the brakes, feeling the car skid slightly on the asphalt. My heart raced. What the hell is this? A suitcase? Out here? In the middle of nowhere? For a moment, I just sat there, the headlights bathing the lonely object. I felt uncomfortable. Something was wrong. It could have just been an oversight. Maybe someone had lost it off a truck. But what if it wasn't? The suitcase was so perfectly placed, it seemed deliberate. The silence around me grew even heavier. The last thing I wanted was to get out of the car. I knew it would be a mistake. So I carefully slowed down, turned the wheel to the left, and moved into the opposite lane to steer around it. My eyes never left the suitcase as I passed by it. That's when I noticed. The suitcase was slightly open. Not all the way, but just enough for a small black gap to be visible. For a second, I wondered if something or someone was inside watching me pass. A shiver ran through my body and I swallowed hard. Don't stop! Don't stop! Don't stop! I thought to myself. I accelerated a bit and continued driving, trying to shake the scene from my mind. Maybe it was just paranoia. I was tired. My brain could be playing tricks on me. Yeah. That's it. I just needed to get home. 5 minutes later, my headlights illuminated something else on the road. This time, an old truck was stopped in the middle of the lane. No hazard lights, no headlights on, just a dark silhouette blocking my way. My fingers gripped the steering wheel. This was the kind of thing that made people disappear. I stopped at a safe distance and just watched. Nothing. No movement inside the cab. The engine was off. The interior was completely dark. The tension mounted. I hesitated for a moment, then honked. The sound echoed down the road, but nothing happened. I waited a few more seconds, my chest rising and falling quickly. The adrenaline was beginning to spread through my body. I looked around. Cornfields on all sides. There was no one there. Or at least, that's what it seemed. I decided to go around the truck, just like I did with the suitcase. As I passed by it, I noticed the deep dents in the body and the scratches, as if something had been dragged against the metal. My stomach churned. But the worst came when I looked through the cab window. The driver's seat was empty. I thought of someone standing in the middle of the road at 2 a.m., waiting for a car like mine. And it was at that moment, in the high beams, that I saw a shadow ahead on the road. A man was standing in the middle of the lane, waving desperately at me. My body froze. The man was in the middle of the road, lit by my headlights. His clothes were dirty, his hair was messy, and his arms were scratched, as if he'd crossed through thick brush. He looked exhausted, but what bothered me the most was the smile he gave me as soon as I stopped. A smile way too wide for the situation. My instincts screamed for me to turn around and get the hell out of there, but before I could do anything, he started walking toward my car. I lowered the window just a few centimeters. Enough to hear, but not enough for him to reach inside. Hey man, did you see a truck stop back there? His voice was rough, as if he was hoarse. My eyes never left him. Yeah, I saw. He nodded, still smiling. Something was wrong with his eyes. Can you give me a ride there? I ran out of gas, and I was going to get help. The way he said it was strange, unhurried, as if he already knew the answer I was going to give. But something didn't make sense. You were going to get help, and you want me to take you back there? A glint passed through his eyes. He hesitated. For a moment, it seemed like he was going to come up with an excuse, but he just let out a dry laugh. Yeah, I thought it was farther. My heart was pounding wildly. My gaze shifted for a second, going to the brush next to the road. A glimmer caught my eye between the leaves. Something was hidden there. I wanted to deny it, wanted to tell myself it was just paranoia, but my instincts were screaming that this was a trap. I quickly rolled up the window and put the car in reverse. The man's smile disappeared in an instant. He threw himself against the car, pounding the window hard. "Don't do it! Open the door!" Panic exploded inside me. That's when I saw the glint of a blade in his hand. He tried to open the door, yanking the handle repeatedly. I hit the gas. The car jolted backward. The man almost lost his balance but kept his eyes locked on me as he screamed incoherent words. When I had backed up enough, I jerked the wheel to the side and floored it. In the rearview mirrors, I saw the man running after me. And then other shadows emerged from the brush. There were more of them. 3 figures stepped out of the darkness, all armed. One of them was holding something that looked like a chain. Another had a crowbar. The third, a rifle. My whole body was trembling as I sped up. The empty road now seemed like an endless tunnel where anything could emerge from the darkness. My chest burned. If I had gotten out of the car, if I had hesitated for a few more seconds, they would have caught me. I called the police as soon as I had the courage to pull over at a gas station, already in Wichita. My voice trembled as I described everything. The officers took my report seriously and sent patrol cars to the area. The next day, they called me. The truck, it disappeared. The suitcase on the road, gone. No trace, nothing. Just tire marks and something worse. They found blood. A lot of blood spread across the asphalt near where the truck had been. But no bodies, only the trail of something being dragged into the cornfield. The man who tried to get into my car was never identified. No arrests were made. No suspects were found. And to this day, I don't know what happened to the person who stopped to help them before me. All I know is that after that night, I could never drive long distances again without feeling a knot in my stomach. I never stopped to help anyone on the road again. And above all, I never drove at night again. It was winter, the kind of cold that cut through the skin and made your bones ache. I was driving an interstate cargo truck crossing the empty roads between Des Moines, Iowa, and Omaha, Nebraska. The snow had started falling slowly, covering the highway in white, while my headlights illuminated the lonely path. It was already past midnight. My body was heavy with exhaustion, so I decided to stop at one of those trucker stops in the middle of nowhere, just to stretch my legs and grab a coffee. The place was small with only a few lights on. Just 2 trucks were parked in the lot, meaning the night was dead. I got out, rubbing my hands to ward off the cold, and entered the convenience store. I grabbed a coffee and went to the bathroom. When I came out, I took a quick look around. No one there except the bored clerk behind the counter. But when I returned to the parking lot, I realized I wasn't alone anymore. Behind the store, in the darkest part of the lot, a man was standing, leaning against the wall. He was wearing a heavy coat and a cap pulled low, hiding most of his face. But one thing caught my attention. He was staring directly at me. I tried to ignore it. Maybe he was just another trucker, smoking a cigarette before heading out. But when I opened the truck door and looked again in the rearview mirror, he was still there, motionless, watching me. A chill ran down my spine. I sat in the driver's seat and closed the door. My instinct told me to leave immediately. I started the engine and took a sip of the coffee. But before shifting into gear, I looked again in the mirror. The man wasn't there anymore. My heart raced. I turned my head, trying to see where he had gone, but there was no sign of him anywhere in the parking lot. I wasn't going to wait to find out. I shifted into gear and drove off. The road was empty. I drove through the snow, the headlights reflecting off the frozen signs along the way. The hot coffee helped keep me awake, but the unease didn't go away. That man, the way he stared at me, it didn't feel normal. 10 minutes passed. 20. 30. Gradually, I tried to forget what had happened. Then I saw something in the rearview mirror. A quick glimmer. For a moment, I thought it was just the reflection of a sign on the road, but when I looked again, I saw something behind my trailer. A car. It was so close I couldn't see it clearly in the side mirror. The headlights were off. My fingers tightened on the steering wheel. What the hell? It didn't make sense. With the cold and the snow covering the road, who would drive like that? I tried to ignore it. Maybe it was just some idiot playing hide and seek on the highway. But after a few minutes, it was still there. I changed lanes. The car followed. I swerved to the right. It followed me. They were following me. The cold I felt now didn't come from the winter. It came from the terror that was beginning to grow inside me. My heart raced as I tried to think of what to do. I couldn't just brake. If it was some crazy guy trying to rob me, I'd be completely vulnerable. The car stayed behind me for another 20 minutes. I was already starting to sweat, even with the cold outside. That's when, without warning, it slowed down and disappeared into the darkness of the road. My breathing was heavy. What was that? What did that bastard want? The only thing I knew was that I didn't want to encounter that person again. But I was wrong. I was going to see him again that night, and in the worst possible way. I couldn't get it out of my head. The car just vanished, like it had never been there. But I knew what I had seen. I knew someone was following me. My whole body was tense. The road ahead was a dark tunnel with no streetlights, no life. The snow fell slowly, forming a white blanket over the asphalt, and everything felt dead, too silent. I tried to breathe deeply and keep driving, but something deep in my mind wouldn't let me relax. I checked the rearview mirror every minute, waiting to see that gleam again, but the car never appeared again. Around 3 a.m., my exhaustion finally overcame the fear. I needed to rest before continuing. I saw a small pull-off on the side of the road, one of those makeshift spots for truckers to park. There was no facility, just a piece of asphalt surrounded by dry trees and the oppressive darkness of the forest. But I had no choice. I parked, turned off the engine. The silence took over the cab. I reclined the seat, pulled my coat up to my chest, and closed my eyes. I don't know how much time passed, but something woke me up. I couldn't say what. There was no noise, no movement, just an overwhelming feeling, a cold shiver running up my spine. I wasn't alone. My body froze. Slowly, I forced my eyes open, and then in the weak reflection of the glass, I saw it, a silhouette. Outside my window, my heart raced like it was going to explode. There was a man standing there, looking inside the truck. I froze. It was him. The same guy from the gas station, the same car that followed me on the road. He had found me. His face was disturbingly close to the glass. His eyes were wide open. Too much. He was smiling. My blood froze when he raised a knife, a long, dirty knife, reflecting the weak light from the road. He tested the door handle. Click, click, click. He pulled 3 times. The door was locked. Thank God. My breath was stuck in my throat. He had seen that I was awake now. His eyes locked onto mine. His smile disappeared. Then he started banging on the glass. Thump! 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 Each bang was like a punch to my chest. The glass was thick, but what if it broke? My hands were trembling as I reached for the key in the ignition. My heart felt like it was going to leap out of my chest. He hit harder. Thump! 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 I turned the key. The engine took a moment to start. Damn! 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 I hit the dashboard, the panic rising. Thump! 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 He took a few steps back, and then he did something that made me want to vomit. He laughed. A soundless laugh, just lips moving, his eyes glazed, staring at me. The engine finally started. I floored it, kicking snow behind me. The truck shook and started moving. I looked in the rearview mirror, my heart pounding. The man didn't run. He just stood there in the snow, watching me disappear into the darkness. And then his car emerged from behind my truck. He had never been alone. I drove nonstop until dawn. When I finally found a police station on the road, I filed the report. The officers took it seriously and sent patrols to the area. But as I feared, they found nothing. No car, no footprints in the snow, nothing. As if it had never happened. I spent weeks without sleeping properly after that. Every reflection in the rearview mirror made me break into a cold sweat. I couldn't stop to rest on the road anymore without feeling like someone was outside, waiting. I'm still a truck driver, but since that night, I've never slept in the truck again. And whenever I see headlights off in the rearview mirror, I floor it. I was 16 years old when I got my first job as a pizza delivery driver in Fort Wayne, Indiana. For a teenager, having an old car and a few bucks in my pocket was enough freedom. I remember that damn Tuesday perfectly. The flow of orders was calm, and I just wanted to finish my shift and go home. When the clock struck 9 p.m., a last order came through the system. 2 medium pizzas to an address in a secluded neighborhood on the outskirts of town. This is where my horror story began. Last one of the day, man. After this, you can head home, my manager said, throwing the boxes into my thermal bag. I grabbed the pizzas and got into the car. The night was oddly quiet. The neighborhood was about 15 minutes away from the pizzeria, an area with houses spaced far apart surrounded by tall trees. As soon as I turned onto the last street, I noticed something strange. A car came out of a side street and pulled in behind me. There was no one else on the road. It could have been a coincidence, of course. But something bothered me. Why would they keep the headlights off? I slowed down, hoping they would pass me, but they stayed right behind me. My stomach churned. It could just be someone distracted. But what were the chances that a car without headlights would follow me all the way to that secluded neighborhood? I turned onto the customer's street and checked the address. The car behind me kept following, but after a few seconds it went straight through and disappeared around the corner. I let out a sigh, feeling my body relax a bit. Maybe I was just paranoid. The address was at the end of a long driveway, a lonely house surrounded by dark trees. I turned on the high beams to see better. I turned off the car, grabbed the pizzas, and walked up to the front door. I knocked 3 times. The silence that followed was agonizing. The porch lights were on, but the house seemed dead. I waited. I knocked again. This time I heard footsteps inside. My heart raced. The door opened and a woman in her early 30s appeared. She was wearing a bathrobe and her face had a confused, tired expression. "Hi, can I help you?" she said, frowning. I lifted the boxes. "Your order, ma'am, 2 medium pizzas." What happened next made my blood run cold. The woman furrowed her brow even more and said, "I didn't order any pizza." The feeling was instant. Something was wrong. Very wrong. I stammered for a moment and checked the address. "But this is the right number." She shook her head, visibly annoyed. "I live alone and I was already sleeping. It must have been a mistake." That's when I realized the car that followed me, the secluded house, the order was fake. Someone wanted me to come here. I swallowed hard and forced a smile at the woman. "Sorry for the inconvenience. I'll check with the store." I turned to leave, but then I saw it. A car was parked behind mine. The headlights were off, the same car as before. Panic took over. My car was blocked. I had nowhere to go. My muscles froze. The car behind mine wasn't there when I arrived. They were waiting. My mind raced with desperation. What should I do? Run? Ask for help? My chest was rising and falling too quickly. The door to the house was still open behind me. My instincts screamed at me to run back and ask for help, but something held me back. What if whoever was in the car decided to break in too? The woman wasn't involved in this. I couldn't risk it. So I kept walking, as if nothing was wrong, as if I wasn't dying inside. When I got near my car, the doors of the other vehicle opened. 4 men stepped out, all wearing dark hoodies with hoods covering part of their faces. 4. My body screamed for me to run, but my legs felt like they were made of lead. One of them kept one hand in his pocket, pressing something. A gun? A knife? Another one gave a small smile, the kind of smile a predator gives before attacking. I was cornered. They began walking toward me, slowly as if they wanted to savor me before the attack. My hands were trembling. My heart was hammering in my chest. That's when my body reacted before my mind could catch up. I threw the pizzas to the ground and bolted in the opposite direction. I heard one of them yell, "Get him!" Heavy footsteps cracked on the asphalt behind me. They were chasing me. I was going to die. My lungs were burning as I sprinted toward the forest beside the road. Branches scratched me, snow got inside my shoes, but I didn't stop. My breath was growing shallow. The footsteps behind me were getting closer. That's when I heard a sharp sound tearing through the air. A blade embedding itself into a tree beside me. They had knives, and they weren't playing. I ran aimlessly, just plunging deeper into the darkness, jumping over fallen logs, dodging branches, ignoring the pain in my legs. The sound of the footsteps was fading, until silence. My chest was rising and falling. Had they given up, or were they waiting for me to stop? The thought filled me with paralyzing terror. If I stayed there, they could be surrounding me. I tried to control my breathing. I forced myself not to sob. That's when I heard it. The snow behind me creaking under a weight. They were still there. I didn't think. I ran again. I don't remember how I got out of there. I just remember throwing myself onto the road when I saw the headlights of a car approaching. It was a couple returning from dinner. I was so terrified, covered in snow and scratches, that they almost didn't stop for me. But I begged. They took me to the nearest police station. I could barely speak. The words came out in sobs. Fear still gripped my neck. The police went to the delivery address. The men and the car were gone, but my car was still there. And inside it, there was a knife embedded in the driver's seat. They left a message. They were waiting for me to come back. The police never found the culprits. No suspects, no leads. The address used for the order? Completely fake. I spent weeks without sleeping properly. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw those men getting out of the car, the footsteps in the snow, the blade flying close to my face. Eventually, I quit the job, and since that night, I've never taken a delivery order again. Because now I know someone could be waiting for you on the other side. My name is David, and I'm an Uber driver in Chicago. I work the night shift because it pays better, but also because I like the city when it's empty, just lights flickering in the skyscrapers and the cold wind blowing through the streets. I always thought the worst thing that could happen was a drunk passenger vomiting in my back seat. I was wrong. It was just past midnight when I accepted a ride in a more remote neighborhood. The passenger's name was Darren, and when he got into the car, a chill ran down my spine. He was wearing a thick black coat, hood pulled over his forehead, and sunglasses, despite the darkness outside. His smell of cigarette smoke and sweat filled the air in the car. "Good evening," I murmured, expecting some kind of response. He just grunted and typed the destination into the app. A jewelry store downtown. I didn't think much of it at first, but as I drove, I noticed his restless gestures. He kept glancing out the window as if checking something, fiddling with his pocket repeatedly. And then when I made a turn and the headlights of another car briefly lit up the interior, I saw it. A gun. It was tucked into the side of his coat, the metal handle glinting for a moment before being swallowed up by the dark fabric again. My heart hammered in my chest. I took a deep breath and tried to stay calm. Maybe he was an undercover cop. Maybe he was a security guard. But it didn't feel right. So, while waiting for a traffic light to change, I did something I should never have done. I glanced at the rearview mirror. He noticed. "What's up?" His voice was hoarse, sharp. "Nothing," I replied too quickly. My stomach sank. Darren flashed a crooked smile, and that's when I noticed another detail, a knife attached to his belt, the serrated blade, dirty, scratched by time. It wasn't just any knife. This was a predator's weapon. I needed to get out of this. Fast. I kept a neutral expression as I drove, but my mind was racing. If he was really going to rob the jewelry store, that made me an accomplice. And if he didn't want any witnesses, I'd be dead before I even knew what happened. That's when I had an idea. "Damn," I muttered, fiddling with the dashboard. "I think something's wrong with the car." "What?" His tone grew more rigid. "The engine's acting strange. I'm going to pull over for a minute or it'll die in the middle of traffic." Before he could argue, I pulled the car over to the side near Grant Park, a busy area with some pedestrians and, more importantly, police vehicles parked further ahead. My chance. "Shit, this has never happened before," I said, opening the door and stepping out. Darren was watching me, tense. I pretended to look at the engine, but in reality, I was looking for a way to get away. Then I saw two officers talking near a squad car. My pulse quickened. I swallowed hard and began walking toward them. If Darren noticed, I was screwed. The problem was, he had already noticed. Each step toward the officers felt like a race against time. I could feel Darren's gaze burning into my back, his presence hanging over me like a deadly shadow inside the car. My mind screamed at me to run, but that would be a mistake. If he realized I knew too much, he could act without thinking, and a guy armed with a pistol and a filthy serrated knife probably wouldn't hesitate to kill me right there. "Hey guys," I murmured, approaching the officers. My voice came out weak, almost a whisper. Both of them turned to me, one of them furrowing his brow. "Is there a problem?" My heart was pounding so loudly I could barely hear my own words. I kept my face neutral, but my hand trembled slightly as I pointed to my car. "My passenger, he's armed. I think he's going to rob the jewelry store downtown. He has a knife too." The officers exchanged glances, and then one of them, a tall guy with a shaved head, discreetly reached for his radio. "Are you sure about this?" the other asked, lowering his voice. I glanced at the car. Darren was still in the back seat, just motionless, but now he was watching me. "He knows I'm talking to you." The officer with the shaved head nodded and drew his gun from his holster. "Move away slowly. We're making the arrest." I tried to appear natural as I backed up, but the moment the officer started to move, Darren slammed the door open with a violent shove. "Hey!" the officer shouted. It happened fast. Like a cornered animal, Darren pulled out the pistol and aimed it at them. Time seemed to freeze. I held my breath, waiting for the sound of gunshots. But Darren hesitated. Maybe he knew there was no way out. Maybe he'd expected me to be just another scared driver who wouldn't take action. The officers didn't hesitate. In seconds, one of them lunged and grabbed Darren's arm, twisting it with force as the other shoved him against the hood of the squad car. The pistol clattered to the ground with a metallic sound, followed by a muffled scream. "Don't move, you piece of shit!" Darren tried to resist, but soon enough, he was cuffed. I couldn't move. My mind was still processing how close I had come to becoming a headline. One of the officers grabbed the knife from his belt and whistled. This guy wasn't playing around. They tossed him into the squad car as he spat insults, his eyes red with fury. Then he locked eyes with me and smiled. A wide, cold smile, like he already knew where to find me. My knees almost gave out. That same night, as I tried to sleep, the news exploded across local newspapers. Darren wasn't just any thief. He'd done this before. But last time, he killed the driver. I was the exception. This time, he didn't have a chance. But every time I close my eyes, I see that smile in my mind, and I wonder how many more times I'll get that lucky. Maybe you've experienced something like this. Maybe you felt that eerie sensation of someone following you. If you've been through it, share in the comments. And if you've never felt it, I just hope it stays that way. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed it, leave a like and subscribe to the channel. Until next time.